Hello everyone, welcome to the 225 jury charge and literary portion of the class. We're going to start off with some jury charge, and this is criminal. Ready? It now becomes your duty as jurors in this case involving assault and battery to determine all the facts that have been presented. You have heard the attorney for the people sum up his case. You have heard the attorney for the defense make his summation to you, and you have heard all the witnesses present their sides of the events which took place last December. Evidence is either direct or circumstantial. Direct evidence is evidence that directly proves a fact without the necessity of establishing that fact. Substantial evidence is evidence that, if found to be true, proves a fact from which an inference of the existence of another fact may be drawn. Both direct evidence and circumstantial evidence are acceptable as means of proof. Neither is entitled to any greater weight than the other. You must remember that the defendant is presumed to be innocent until proved guilty. The people must establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. What does reasonable doubt mean? It means a doubt based upon reason and common sense. You must reasonably be certain that this defendant is guilty. You must have no doubts as to his guilt. You must feel sure that he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Intent can be shown by a statement of intent made by a defendant, by the circumstances attended the act, the manner in which it was done, the means used, and the soundness of mind and discretion of the person committing the act. For the purposes of this case, you must assume that the defendant was of sound mind at the time of the alleged conduct which is charged constituted the crime described in the information. Okay. I have an article here. This is called Rev Up, Lose Weight, Feel Great. Okay. It says, can't drop those pounds. A sluggish metabolism may be the reason. Here's what to do about it. And I will read this at 180. Okay, here we go. You've gone on a diet after diet, yet still haven't shed those unwanted pounds, or worse, your weight is actually going up. The problem could be your metabolism. Your body is operating speed, which determines the rate at which you burn calories. If you have a fast metabolism, you'll burn calories quickly and easily. If your metabolism is slow, a greater portion of the calories you consume will be stored in your body as fat. But don't give up. Research shows it's possible to rev up a sluggish metabolism so you can burn calories and lose weight faster. Here's how. Number 1, reduce the fat in your diet. It's not just the number of calories you eat that counts, but their source. A diet containing large amounts of fat is actually more fattening than a diet of identical calorie count composed of proteins and carbohydrates. Why? Fat slows your metabolism more than those other food groups. Researchers have estimated that your body will burn about 23 calories to convert 100 calories of carbohydrates into fat. But to turn 100 calories of dietary fat into body fat, you burn only about 3 calories. That means you'll store more calories as fat. So a diet rich in proteins and carbohydrates will cause your metabolism to move faster than one rich in fats. Fats are also more calorically dense than other foods. 1 gram of fat contains 9 calories, while 1 gram of protein or carbohydrate contains only 4. Thus, a small serving of fatty foods such as cheese or nuts can contain even more calories than a large serving of a low-fat food such as cantaloupe. Number 2, choose the right carbohydrate foods. Because carbohydrates cost more than fat for your body to store, they're important to your diet, but all carbohydrates are not alike. Some simple carbohydrates such as table sugar and honey, and foods that contain them such as candy and cookies, can be diet destroyers because of their high calorie count, plus they're nutrient poor. Simple carbs also stimulate the production of insulin, the hormone responsible for moving sugar out of the bloodstream and into cells. When you eat sugar-rich foods by themselves or in large quantities, insulin levels can rise sharply, forcing blood sugar to drop afterward. The results for some people, hunger and fatigue. Complex carbohydrate foods are your best choices. These include vegetables, fruits, and whole grain breads and cereals, all high in vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Number 3, stick with regularly scheduled meals. Have you ever tried to diet by skipping breakfast and having a tiny lunch, only to blow your diet by binging at dinner? If so, you recognize that meal skipping sets you up for an eating fest when your natural hunger asserts itself. Skipping one meal and overeating at the next could encourage your body to put on weight. Researchers have demonstrated that laboratory animals that consumed their whole day's rations at one time became fatter than animals that ate several smaller meals, even though total daily calorie consumption was equal for both groups. This pattern may hold true for people as well. So stay with 3 diet-sized meals per day to keep your metabolism humming along steadily. Number 4, consume adequate calories. When you severely limit your calories, dipping below the 900 per day level, not only do you drastically shortchange yourself nutritionally, but your body perceives this food scarcity as a starvation threat. It reacts by slowing down your metabolism to hoard energy. The lower your calorie count falls, the more slowly your metabolism runs. So very low calorie diets actually make it harder to lose weight, since your body begins to burn fewer calories as you eat less. A sensible low-fat diet of at least 1,200 calories a day is preferable. Remember that whenever you reduce your calorie intake, you may forego vital nutrients. So when you diet, you may want to take a multivitamin mineral supplement that supplies 100% of the U.S. recommended daily allowances, RDA, of needed nutrients. Number 5, exercise regularly. If you exercise in addition to dieting, you'll reach your goal more quickly and easily. Not only does exercise burn calories while you work out, but your metabolism remains high after you've finished your workout, so you continue to burn calories at a higher rate for a few hours. Exercise also makes it easier to maintain your weight because it increases muscle mass. Muscle uses more calories to maintain itself than body fat does. So the higher your muscle to fat ratio, the more calories you'll burn, even when you're not moving a muscle. Follow these exercise tips. Number 1, choose aerobic exercise because it gets your whole body in high gear. Aerobic exercise gives your metabolism that needed push. Schedule your workouts. Make an appointment with yourself and keep it. If you decide you'll exercise when you have time, you never will. Pick activities you enjoy. Walking, pedaling a stationary bike, working out to an aerobic video. They're easier to stick with. Exercise at least 30 minutes every other day. Otherwise, your body won't reap the metabolism boosting benefits. If you stay with this new way of dieting, you will begin to look, feel, and think like a different person. You'll lose weight and keep it off, and you'll be more in control of your entire life. Great article there. Okay. I have a narrative answer. I'm going to read this once at 180, once at 190. I'll go to 200 and then 225. Okay? All right. So the first one will be at 180. Here we go. It was a truck. The guy stopped in front of the car, and the way he was positioned and the way I was, his headlights were going sort of like over the top, and there was nothing but a clear space, and I had to stay there. I thought he was going to get out and check the car and everything, and maybe grab the keys. He didn't do nothing. He just sat there for about, 30 seconds, and then he started backing up over the hill and went down over the other side. So when he was gone, I went back down to the car, got in, and then just, accelerated on up over the hill, and he had pulled back far enough where I could get onto Highway 99. I could see him. He had his car over on the white line that marks the side of the road. You might say his tires were on dirt. Okay, so now I'm going to read this at 190. Okay, all right, here we go. It was a truck. The guy stopped in front of the car, and the way he was positioned and the way I was, his headlights were going sort of like over the top, and there was nothing but a clear space, and I had to stay there. I thought he was going to get out and check the car and everything, and maybe grab the keys. He didn't do nothing. He just sat there for about 30 seconds, and then he started backing up over the hill and went down over the side. So when he was gone, I went back down to the car, got in, and then just, accelerated on up over the hill, and he had pulled back far enough where I could get onto Highway 99. I could see him. He had his car over on the white line that marks the side of the road. You might say his tires were on dirt. Okay, so now I'm going to read this at, I'll read this at 220. Actually, I'll read it at 200. Okay. All right, here we go, 200. It was a truck. The guy stopped in front of the car, and the way he was positioned and the way I was, his headlights were going sort of like over the top, and there was nothing but a clear space, and I had to stay there. I thought he was going to get out and check the car and everything, and maybe grab the keys. He didn't do nothing. He just sat there for about, 30 seconds, and then he started backing up over the hill and went down over the other side. So when he was gone, I went back down to the car, got in, and then just, accelerated on up over the hill. And he had pulled back far enough where I could get onto Highway 99. I could see him. He had his car over on the white line that marks the side of the road. You might say his tires were on dirt. Okay, so this last take will be at 225. Okay. 225. Here we go. Ready? It was a truck. The guy stopped in front of the car, and the way he was positioned and the way I was, his headlights were going sort of like over the top, and there was nothing but a clear space, and I had to stay there. I thought he was going to get out and check the car and everything and maybe grab the keys. He didn't do nothing. He just sat there for about, 30 seconds, and then he started backing up over the hill and went down over the other side. So when he was gone, I went back down to the car, got in, and then just, accelerated on up over the hill. And he had pulled back far enough where I could get onto Highway 99. I could see him. He had his car over on the white line that marks the side of the road. You might say his tires were on dirt. Okay. Going to do another jury charge. This is on general, just a general jury charge, okay? All right, here we go. Ready? Discrepancies in a witness's testimony or between his testimony and that of others, if there was any, do not necessarily mean that the witness should be discredited. Failure of recollection is a common experience, and innocent misrecollection is not uncommon. Also, it is a fact that two persons witnessing an incident or a transaction often will see or hear it differently. Whether a discrepancy pertains to a fact of importance or only to a trivial detail should be considered in weighing its significance. You are not bound to decide in conformity with the testimony of a number of witnesses that does not produce conviction in your mind as against the testimony of a lesser number or other evidence that appeals to your mind with more convincing force. This does not mean that you are at liberty to disregard the testimony of the greater number of witnesses merely from caprice or prejudice or from a desire to favor one side as against the other. It does mean that you are not to decide an issue by the simple process of counting the number of witnesses who have testified on the opposing sides. It means that the final test is not in the relative number of witnesses, but in the relative convincing force of the evidence. Remember that you are not bound to decide any question of fact according to the testimony of a large number of witnesses as against a lesser number of witnesses when such evidence does not produce conviction in your mind. The test to be given to testimony is not merely the number of witnesses, but rather the weight to which the testimony of such witnesses or witnesses is entitled. Okay. I have an article here. This is called Parents Are as Good as Their Word. Okay, here we go. Ready? In the annals of parenting, there are some threats that have become classics. One of these days, you'll have children just as rotten as you are, is one. You made your bed, now lie in it, is another goodie. And who could forget, if you can't listen, you'll just have to suffer. This was delivered just before my mother brought great pain to some part of my body. Some expressions, however, just never caught on. Only once in the years I was growing up did I hear my mother say, "I'm going to give you something to laugh about." Whenever I was standing there with tears running down my cheeks, so miserable I wanted to die, she would say, "I'm going to give you something to cry about." I already had something to cry about, but she always figured she had something better. I never knew what the difference was between my tears and the new ones she gave me, but she invariably seemed pleased. Parents worry when their kids are too happy. I don't know why, but I can remember going into a bedroom where my kids were bouncing on the bed, giggling out of control, and having such a good time. They were on the verge of ecstasy. I'd say, "Keep it up. You're going to be crying in a minute." Talk about stopping the clock just before midnight on New Year's Eve. There was always a perfect time for giving a child something to cry about. Just before you took the family picture seemed to be good. That way their eyes were puffy and their faces pinched and distorted. They looked like they were poster children for grief. Embarking on a fun vacation was another time to make sure there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Whenever the back seat of the car was quiet, I'd reach over and give one of them a whack for what they were thinking of doing next. If they didn't do it, they still had a whack for all the times they did something and I never saw it. Occasionally, you will give birth to a child who will not be intimidated. Your threats fall on deaf ears. When you say to him, "I'm going to give you something to cry about," he smarts back, "Like what?" Your answer, "I'm going to take away your computer, withhold your allowance, give away your puppy, and see to it that you never see another Oreo cookie for as long as you live." He answers, "Who cares?" Some children do not want their mothers to be happy. The only time my mother turned the phrase in the other direction was one day when I messed up and she said, "You've buttered your bread, now lie in it." I began to laugh and she said, "I'll give you something to laugh about," and pinched a piece of my arm off. I showed her. I cried myself sick. Okay. I'm going to read an excerpt from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. This is on when in doubt about whose turn it is to take out the trash, go ahead and take it out. Ready? If we're not careful, it's easy to become resentful about all the responsibilities of daily living. Once, in a very low mood, I figured out that on an average day, I do over 1,000 different things. Of course, when I'm in a better mood, that number is significantly lower. As I think about it, it's astounding to me how easy it is for me to remember all the chores that I do, as well as all the other responsibilities that I take care of. But at the same time, it's easy for me to forget all the things that my wife does on a daily basis. How convenient. It's really difficult to become a contented person if you're keeping score of all you do. Keeping track only discourages you by cluttering your mind with who's doing what, who's doing more, and so forth. If you want to know the truth about it, this is the epitome of small stuff. It will bring you far more joy to your life to know that you have done your part and someone else in your family has one less thing to do than it will to worry and fret over those who turn it, or for those, than it will to worry and fret over whose turn it is to take out the trash. The strongest argument against this strategy is the concern that you'll be taken advantage of. This mistake is similar to believing it's important that you're right. Most of the time, it's not important that you're right, and neither is it important if you take the trash out a few more times than your spouse or housemate. Making things like garbage less relevant in your life will undoubtedly free up more time and energy for truly important things. Great advice there. Okay, well, that concludes our jury charge in literary for the 225 class. Have a great day.